The Philosophy of the Bomb by Bhagat Singh. Recent events, particularly the Congress resolution on the attempt to blow up the Viceregal Special on the 23rd of December 1929, and Gandhi's subsequent writings in Young India, clearly show that the Indian National Congress, in conjunction with Gandhi, has launched a crusade against the revolutionaries. A great amount of public criticism, both from the press and the platform, has been made against them. It is a pity that they have all along been, either deliberately or due to sheer ignorance, misrepresented and misunderstood. The revolutionaries do not shun criticism and public scrutiny of their ideals or actions. They rather welcome these as chances of making those understand who give a genuine desire to do so the basic principles of the revolutionary movement and the high and noble ideals that are a perennial source of inspiration and strength to it. It is hoped that this article will help the general public to know the revolutionaries as they are and will prevent it from taking them for what interested and ignorant persons would have it believe them to be. Violence or nonviolence. Let us, first of all, take up the question of violence and nonviolence. We think that the use of these terms in itself is a grave injustice to either party, for they express the ideals of neither of them correctly. Violence is physical force applied for committing injustice, and that is certainly not what the revolutionaries stand for. On the other hand, what generally goes by the name of nonviolence is in reality the theory of soul force. As applied to the attainment of personal and national rights through courting, suffering, and hoping, thus to finally convert your opponent to your point of view. When a revolutionary believes certain things to be his right, he asks for them, pleads for them, argues for them, wills to attain them with all the soul force at his command, stands the greatest amount of suffering for them, is always prepared to make the highest sacrifice for their attainment, and also back his efforts with all the physical force he is capable of. You may coin what other word you like to describe his methods, but you cannot call it violence, because that would constitute an outrage on the dictionary meaning of that word. Satyagraha is insistence upon truth. Why press for the acceptance of truth by soul force alone? Why not add physical force also to it? While the revolutionaries stand for winning independence by all the forces, physical as well as moral, at their command, the advocates of soul force would like to ban the use of physical force. The question really, therefore, is not whether you will have violence, but whether you will have soul force plus physical force or soul force alone. Our ideal. The revolutionaries believe that the deliverance of their country will come through revolution. The revolution they are constantly working and hoping for will not only express itself in the form of an armed conflict between the foreign government and its supporters and the people, it will also usher in a new social order. The revolution will ring the death knell of capitalism and class distinctions and privileges. It will bring joy and prosperity to the starving millions who are seething today under the terrible yoke of both foreign and Indian exploitation. It will bring the nation into its own. It will give birth to a new state, a new social order. Above all, it will establish the dictatorship of the proletariat and will forever banish social parasites from the seat of political power. Terrorism. The revolutionaries already see the advent of the revolution in the restlessness of youth, in its desire to break free from the mental bondage and religious superstitions that hold them. As the youth will get more and more saturated with the psychology of revolution, it will come to have a clearer realization of national bondage and a growing, intense, unquenchable thirst for freedom. It will grow, this feeling of bondage, this insatiable desire for freedom, till, in their righteous anger, the infuriated youth will begin to kill the oppressors. Thus has terrorism been born in the country. It is a phase, a necessary, an inevitable phase of the revolution. Terrorism is not the complete revolution, and the revolution is not complete without terrorism. This thesis can be supported by an analysis of any and every revolution in history. Terrorism instills fear in the hearts of the oppressors. It brings hopes of revenge and redemption to the oppressed masses. It gives courage and self confidence to the wavering. It shatters the spell of the superiority of the ruling class and raises the status of the subject race in the eyes of the world because it is the most convincing proof of a nation's hunger for freedom. Here in India, as in other countries in the past, terrorism will develop into revolution, and the revolution into independence, social, political, and economic. Revolutionary methods. This, then, is what the revolutionaries believe in. That is what they hope to accomplish for their country. They are doing it both openly and secretly, and in their own way. The experience of a century-long and worldwide struggle between the masses and the governing class is their guide to their goal, and the methods they are following have never been known to have failed. The Congress and the Revolutionaries. Meanwhile, what has the Congress been doing? It has changed its creed from Swaraj to complete independence. As a logical sequence to this, one would expect it to declare a war on the British government. Instead, we find it has declared war against the revolutionaries. The first offensive of the Congress came in the form of a resolution deploring the attempt made on the 23rd of December 1929 to blow up the Viceroy's Special. It was drafted by Gandhi, and he fought tooth and nail for it, with the result that was passed by a trifling majority of 81 in a House of 1,713. Was even this bare majority a result of honest political convictions? Let us quote the opinion of Sarla Devi Chodharani, who has been a devotee of the Congress all her life. In reply, she says, I discovered in the course of my conversation with a good many of the Mahatma's followers that it was only their sense of personal loyalty to him that was keeping them back from an expression of the independence views and preventing them from voting against any nay resolution whatsoever that was fathered by Mahatma Ji. As to Gandhi's arguments in favor of his proposition, we will deal with them later when we discuss his article, The Cult of the Bomb, which is more or less an amplification of his speech in the Congress. There is one fact about this deplorable resolution which we must not lose sight of, and that is this. In spite of the fact that the Congress is pledged to nonviolence and has been actively engaged in carrying on propaganda in its favor for the last 10 years, and in spite of the fact also that the supporters of the resolution indulged in abuse, called them the revolutionary cowards, and described their actions as dastardly, and one of them even threateningly remarked that if they wanted to be led by Gandhi, they should pass this resolution without any opposition. In spite all of this, the resolution could only be adopted by a dangerously narrow majority. That demonstrates, beyond the shadow of a doubt, how solidly the country is backing the revolutionaries. In a way, Gandhi deserved our thanks for having brought the question up for discussion and thus having shown to the world at large that even the Congress, that stronghold of non-violence, is at least as much, if not more, with the revolutionaries as with him. Gandhi on warpath. Having achieved a victory which cost him more than a defeat, Gandhi has returned to the attack in his article The Cult of the Bomb. We will give it our closest attention before proceeding further. The article consists of three things: his faith, his opinion, and his arguments. We will not discuss what is a matter of faith with him, because reason has little in common with faith. Let us then take such of his opinions as are backed by arguments and his arguments proper against what he calls violence and discuss them one by one. Do the masses believe in nonviolence? He thinks that on the basis of his experience during his latest tour in the country, he is right in believing that the large masses of Indian humanity are yet untouched by the spirit of violence and that nonviolence has come to stay as a political weapon. Let him not delude himself on the experiences of his latest tour in the country. Though it is true that the average leader confines his tours to places where only the mail train can conveniently land him, while Gandhi has extended his tour limit to where a motor car can take him. The practice of staying only with the richest people in the places visited, of spending most of his time on being complimented by his devotees in private and public, and of granting darshan now and then to the illiterate masses whom he claims to understand so well, disqualifies him from claiming to know the mind of the masses. No man can claim to know a people's mind by seeing them from the public platform and giving them darshan and updesh. He cannot the most claim to have told the masses what he thinks about things. Has Gandhi, during recent years, mixed in the social life of the masses? Has he sat with the peasant round the evening fire and tried to know what he thinks? Has he passed a single evening in the company of a factory laborer and shared with him his vows? We have, and therefore we claim to know what the masses think. We assure Gandhi that the average Indian, like the average human being, understands little of the fine theological niceties about ahimsa and loving one's enemy. The way of the world is like this. You have a friend, you love him, sometimes so much that you even die for him. You have an enemy, you shun him, you fight against him, and if possible, kill him. The gospel of the revolutionaries is simple and straight. It is what has been since the days of Adam and Eve, and no man has any difficulty about understanding it. We affirm that the masses of India are solidly with us because we know it from personal experience. The day is not far off when they will flock in their thousands to work the will of the revolution. The Gospel of Love. Gandhi declares that his faith in the efficacy of nonviolence has increased. That is to say, he believes more and more that through his gospel of love and self-imposed suffering, he hopes someday to convert the foreign rulers to his way of thinking. Now, he has devoted his whole life to the preaching of his wonderful gospel and has practiced it with unwavering constance, as few others have done. Will he let the world know how many enemies of India he has been able to turn into friends? How many O'Dwyers, Readings, and Irwins has he been able to convert into friends of India? If none, how can India be expected to share his growing faith that he will be able to persuade and compel England to agree to Indian independence through the practice of nonviolence? What would have happened if the bomb that burst under the Viceroy's special had exploded properly? One of the two things suggested by Gandhi would have surely happened. The Viceroy would have either been badly injured or killed. Under such circumstances, there certainly would have been no meeting between the leaders of political parties and the Viceroy. The uncalled for and undignified attempt on the part of these individuals to lower the bowl in their hands and dominion status on their lips, in spite of the clear terms of the Calcutta Ultimatum, would have been checkmated, and the nation would have been the better off for that. If, unfortunately, the explosion had been powerful enough to kill the viceroy, one more enemy of India would have met a well-deserved doom. The author of the Meerut prosecutions and the Lahore and Busawal persecutions can appear a friend of India only to the enemies of her freedom. In spite of Gandhi and Nehru and their claims to political sagacity and statesmanship, Irwin has succeeded in shattering the unity between political parties in the country that had resulted from the boycott of the Simon Commission. Even the Congress today is a house divided against itself. Who else, except the Viceroy and his olive tongue, have we to thank for our grave misfortunes? And yet, there exist people in our country who proclaim him a friend of India. The future of the Congress. There might be those who have no regard for the Congress and hope nothing from it. If Gandhi thinks that the revolutionaries belong to the category, he wrongs them grievously. They fully realize the part played by the Congress in awakening among the ignorant masses a keen desire for freedom. They expect great things of it in the future, though they hold firmly to their opinion that so long as persons like Sen Gupta, whose wonderful intelligence compels him to discern the hand of the CID in the late attempt to blow up the Viceroy Special, and persons like Ansari, who think abuse the better part of argument and know so little of politics as to make the ridiculous and fallacious assertion that no nation had achieved freedom by the bomb, have a determining voice in the affairs of the Congress. The country can hope little from it. They are hopefully looking forward to the day when the mania of non-violence would have passed away from the Congress and it would march arm in arm with the revolutionaries to their common goal of complete independence. This year, it has accepted the ideal which the revolutionaries have preached and lived up to more than a quarter of a century. Let us hope that next year you will see it endorse their methods also. Violence and military expenditure. Gandhi is of opinion that as violence has been practiced in the country, it has resulted in an increase of military expenditure. If his reference is to revolutionary activities during the last 25 years, we dispute the accuracy of his statement and challenge him to prove his statement with facts and figures. If, on the other hand, he had the wars that have taken place in India since the British came here in mind, our reply is that even his modest experiment in Ahimsa and Satyagraha, which had little to compare in it with the wars for independence, produced its effects on the finances of bureaucracy. Mass action, whether violent or non-violent, whether successful or unsuccessful, is bound to produce the same kind of repercussion on the finances of a state. The reforms. Why should Gandhi mix up the revolutionaries with the various constitutional reforms granted by the government? They never cared or worked for the Morley Minto reforms, Montague reforms, and the like. These the British government threw before the constitutionalist agitators to lure them away from the right path. This was the bribe paid to them for their support to the government and its policy of crushing and uprooting the revolutionaries. These toys, as Gandhi calls them, were sent to India for the benefit of those who, from time to time, raised the cry of home rule, self-government, responsible, full responsible government, dominion status, and such other constitutional names for slavery. The revolutionaries never claimed that the reforms as their achievements. They raised the standard of independence long ago. They have lived for it. They have ungrudgingly laid their lives down for the sake of this ideal. They claim that their sacrifices have produced a tremendous change in the mentality of people, that their efforts have advanced the country a long way on the road to independence is granted by even those who do not see eye to eye with them in politics. The way of progress. As to Gandhi's contention that violence impedes the march of progress and thus directly postpones the day of freedom, we can refer to him to so many contemporary instances where violence has led to the social progress and political freedom of the people who practiced it. Take the case of Russia and Turkey, for example. In both countries, the Party for Progress took over the state organization through an armed revolution. Yet social progress and political freedom have not been impeded. Legislation, backed by force, has made the masses go double march on the road of progress. The solitary example of Afghanistan cannot establish a political format. It is rather the exception that proves the rule. Failure of non-cooperation. Gandhi is of opinion the great awakening in the people during the days of non-cooperation was a result of the preaching of nonviolence. It is wrong to assign to nonviolence the widespread awakening of the masses, which, in fact, is manifested wherever a program of direct action is adopted. In Russia, for instance, there came about widespread awakening in the peasants and workers when the communists launched forth their great program of militant mass action, though nobody preached nonviolence to them. We will even go further and state that it was mainly the mania for nonviolence and Gandhi's compromise mentality that brought about the disruption of the forces that had come together at the call of mass action. It is claimed that nonviolence can be used as a weapon for righting political wrongs. To say the least, it is a novel idea, yet untried. It failed to achieve what were considered to be the just rights of Indians in South Africa. It failed to bring Swaraj within a year to the Indian masses in spite of the untiring labors of an army of national workers and 1.25 crores of rupees. More recently, it failed to win for the Bardoli peasants what the leaders of the Satyagraha movement had promised them, the famous irreducible minimum of Gandhi and Patel. We know of no other trials nonviolence has had on a countrywide scale. Up to this time, nonviolence has been blessed with one result: failure. Little wonder then that the country refuses to give it another trial. In fact, Satyagraha, as preached by Gandhi, is a form of agitation, a protest, leading up invariably, as has already been seen, to a compromise. It can hardly be of any use to a nation striving for national independence, which can never come as the result of a compromise. The sooner we recognize that there can be no compromise between independence and slavery, the better. Is it a new era? We are entering upon a new era, thinks Gandhi. The mere act of defining Swaraj as complete independence, this technical change in the Congress Constitution, can hardly constitute a new era. It will be a great day indeed when Congress will decide upon a countrywide program of mass action based on well-recognized revolutionary principles. Till then, the unfurling of the flag of independence is a mockery, and we concur with the following remarks of Sarla Devi Chaudrahani, which she recently made in a press interview. The unfurling of the flag of independence, she says, at just 1 minute after midnight of the 31st of December 1929 was too stagey for words, just as the GOC and the assistant GOC and others in gaudy uniforms were cardboard grand officers commanding. The fact that the unfurling of the flag of independence lay hanging in the balance till midnight of that date, and that the scales might have been turned at even the 11th hour, 59th minute, had a message from the Viceroy or the Secretary of State come to the Congress, granting Dominion status, proves that independence is not a heart hunger of the leaders, but that the declaration of it is only like a petulant child's retort. It would have been a worthy action if the Indian National Congress, if independence was achieved first and declared afterwards. It is true that the Congress orators will henceforth harangue the masses on complete independence instead of dominion status. They will call upon the people to prepare for a struggle in which one party is to deliver blows and the other is simply to receive them, till beaten and demoralized beyond hope of recovery. Can such a thing be named a struggle, and can it ever lead the country to complete independence? It is all very well to hold fast to the highest ideal worthy of a nation, but it is none the less necessary to adopt the best, the most efficacious, and tried means to achieve it, or you become the laughing stock of the world. No bullying, please. Gandhi has called upon all those who are not past reason to withdraw their support from the revolutionaries and condemn their actions so that our deluded patriots may, for want of nourishment to their violent spirit, realize the futility of violence and the great harm that violent activities have every time done. How easy and convenient it is to call people deluded, to declare them to be past reason, to call upon the public to withdraw its support and condemn them so that they may get isolated and be forced to suspend their activities, especially when a man holds the confidence of an influential section of the public. It is a pity that Gandhi does not and will not understand revolutionary psychology in spite of the lifelong experience of public life. Life is a precious thing. It is clear to everyone. If a man becomes a revolutionary, if he goes about with his life in the hollow of his hand ready to sacrifice it at any moment, he does not do so merely for the fun of it. He does not risk his life merely because sometimes, when the crowd is in a sympathetic mood, it cries bravo in appreciation. He does it because his reason forces him to take that course, because his conscience dictates it. A revolutionary believes in reason more than anything. It is to reason, and reason alone, that he bows. No amount of abuse and condemnation, even if it emanates from the highest of the high, can turn him from his set purpose. To think that a revolutionary will give up his ideas if public support and appreciation is withdrawn from him is the highest folly. Many a revolutionary has, ere now, stepped on the scaffold and laid his life down for the cause, regardless of the curses that the constitutionalist agitators rained plentifully upon him. If you will have the revolutionaries suspend their activities, reason with them squarely. That is the one and the only way. For the rest, let there be no doubt in anybody's mind. A revolutionary is the last person on earth to submit to bullying. An appeal. We take this opportunity to appeal to our countrymen, to the youth, to the workers and peasants, to the revolutionary intelligentsia, to come forward and join us in carrying aloft the banner of freedom. Let us establish a new order of society in which political and economic exploitation will be an impossibility. In the name of those gallant men and women who willingly accepted death so that we, their descendants, may lead a happier life, who toiled ceaselessly and perished for the poor, the famished, and the exploited millions of India, we call upon every patriot to take up the fight in all seriousness. Let nobody toy with the nation's freedom, which is her very life, by making psychological experiments in non-violence and such other novelties. Our slavery is our shame. When shall we have courage and wisdom enough to be able to shake ourselves free of it? What is our great heritage of civilization and culture worth if we have not enough self-respect left in us to prevent us from bowing surveillance to the commands of foreigners and paying homage to their flag and kind? Victory or death. There is no crime that Britain has not committed in India. Deliberate misrule has reduced us to paupers, has bled us white. As a race and a people, we stand dishonored and outraged. Do people still expect us to forget and to forgive? We shall have our revenge, a people's righteous revenge on the tyrant. Let cowards fall back and cringe for compromise and peace. We ask not for mercy and we give no quarter. Ours is a war to the end, to victory or death. Long live revolution. Bhagat Singh, President, Hindustan Socialist Republican Association. The Philosophy of the Bomb by Bhagat Singh.